Hello everyone, we are Geeks Not Nerds. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince.
And welcome to round 5 of the 5th annual multi-topic extravaganza. We're going to answer some more of your questions for the next half an hour. And once again, if you have yet to ask any questions, you're welcome to tack some more on. Again, if you haven't asked any yet, we're asking people to just ask 2 this time, and we're going to get to, as I said, as many of these as humanly possible. This already being the 5th round, Vince. We'll probably do this for 2 or 3 more weeks, so we might not quite get to everything, but don't you worry, because some of... I'm losing my voice. Don't you worry!
Raggy?
We will look at all of the questions after we have done all of this year's multi-topic extravaganza, and some of them we'll probably make into full videos. And some of the questions we've already answered we loved a lot and kind of want to go back and revisit, and we'll do full videos on some of those as well. But you can do that, not here, but at the multi-topic appetizer, and I leave... Excuse me, your questions there, and the link is in the description. Let's get right into events and answer as many more questions as humanly possible. I want to thank you guys for asking all these really fun and insightful questions. We're always really impressed with all the stuff you guys come up with, and you really make us kind of noodle and think real hard, and we really enjoy that, so thanks a bunch. The first question is from Andrew Kwan, who says, here's a silly 2-part question. Okay, and then he didn't ask another question, so that's totally legal. Well done. What superpower would both of you two have, and what horribly ironic twist would you give to each other? Example, Cap says he has the ability to speak every language, but Vince adds the caveat that he can only inaudibly mumble every language. That's hilarious. I love that question. Like, that's a good question. That was very creative. Nobody's ever asked anything like that before. Now, we have answered the what superpower would you have question before, and I like to try to give a different answer every time. The first time I ever answered that question, Vince, I think it was the ability to remember everything, or like super intelligence or something like that. Yeah. What would yours be? And then I'll try to come up with a twist for it.
I would like to be able to...
You're not ordering at McDonald's, Vince. You're not going to get French fries.
I would like a number 1 with fries and a Diet Coke.
Would you like 1/6 of a Mountain Dew?
Ooh, it's a Pepsi product. Actually, I don't know if McDonald's has Pepsi or Coke. Anyway.
McDonald's is generally... It is Coke, I think, because Pepsi is KFC, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut.
Right.
Yeah. That's how you remember it. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
So, if I
used to own them. I don't think they do anymore, but anyway.
I think I would be able to convince anyone of anything. They will do what I tell them to, or they will believe what I tell them.
And your supervillain or superhero name would be Con-Vince.
Con-Vince, yes.
That's not the caveat. Okay, so you have effectively persuasion powers.
Yeah,
is what you're talking about, and you said you could persuade them to do anything.
Yeah, but I'm not a bad guy. I wouldn't do that, you know.
Well, I'm just trying to think of the caveat, because I was going to make it something where you could only convince them to do certain things, but you did say anything, so I can't give you that. Wow, what would the caveat be? And it works on any kind of person, right? Did you say that?
Well, I guess it was implied.
Did you say? Oh, okay.
Wow, that could be the caveat.
This just sounds somewhat impenetrable.
I said convince anyone of anything, I guess.
Yeah, you did say convince anyone of anything. Wow. Okay. The caveat is, it only works in the dark.
I kind of like that.
Only works in the dark.
It's kind of a cool, you know, it's kind of a cool caveat. I could see that, like you're like the Dark Whisperer or something like that.
Yeah, well, it would be fun because you can be a night hero that way, and then like it doesn't work during the day. So you could be like, what would be really cool is if you're like a corporate CEO or something, and you can't con people
over the phone.
Well, first of all, that's pretty great, but also like during regular business hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, and the other thing that would be cool about it is you'd be an urban legend, because if it happens at night, it would be harder for people to know that you did that, because so many people would be asleep and there wouldn't be as many witnesses.
Yeah, you know what might be kind of cool is if you couldn't do it without direct eye contact.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I didn't think of that. I like mine too, though.
Yeah, I like yours too. And the dark's fun.
Okay, mine would be the ability to... See, I'm just thinking of different ones. This might not be... I might not pick this over super smarts, but I want to pick a different one. This is what I always like. The ability to create any food by thinking about it. So, like, poof, food out of nowhere. Like, poof, I got a pie. Any kind of food that I want.
Out of thin air.
Out of thin air. Yeah, poof, donut.
All right.
Yeah, what would your caveat be, Vince?
You can create it out of thin air, but you have to know all of the chemical ingredients.
Oh, that's awesome! That's awful! You have to look at a recipe, so effectively, you've got to be a good cook to use this power.
Yep.
That's awesome! I hate you for it, because the whole point of the power is I don't have to learn how to cook. And you just ruined the whole point of it. But if you were a world-class chef, that power would be indispensable. I mean, like...
You don't need to know how to cook, you just need to know what goes into it. So you don't even need a kitchen. You just go.
And you wouldn't even need to know like what. And you're a Power Ranger now, apparently. But you wouldn't even need to know like what temperature it's cooked at or anything. Yeah. That was a super fun question. Thank you so much, Andrew Kwan, for asking that question. SpideyFan96. Have we not already answered this question?
I don't know.
Hold on. I feel like maybe two people answered this question. Do you ever get upset when people say to you, superhero movies aren't high art, therefore you can't review those in depth? It's not Shakespeare. I thought we already answered that.
Yeah.
Maybe I skipped Andrew Kwan's question because I know we didn't answer that. I know you guys review character-driven media like Star Trek and certain superhero properties. What is your opinion on media that is more plot-driven? I'm thinking of properties like Lord of the Rings and Warhammer. I think I skipped a question and answered this guy's first question and didn't look at his second question somehow. I think that's what we did. So anyway, let's answer this one. What do you think, Vince? How do you feel about... And I know that, like, when you reviewed the first part of The Hobbit, this was a big thing for you, where you were you were discussing it on the level of traditional fiction, but of course it isn't that, but you didn't seem to be able to accept it for being just a plot-driven thing.
I get really, really frustrated with just plot-driven stuff. Now, it depends. There are certain guilty pleasures I have. Like, I really like The Phantom. Yeah. And, I mean, a lot of those Pulp Fiction things I kind of get a big kick out of. But anything...
Well, those are even melodramas before they're anything else, right? Like,
so, I mean, and somebody learns a lesson at the end because, you know, there has to be evil punished. It's, you know, it's always a really, really traditional lesson. But stuff
some fantasy is more about straight-up world-building, right? And you have a character where you're following them, but there's not anything really, you know, unique personality trait.
You know, I think that there's a difference between something that's interesting and plot-driven and something that's just crap-happening, as they call it. And
it's a term now, yeah.
It is now. Who's they? Me. So like the first Hobbit is just walking through what is it, New Zealand, right? That's where they shot it?
Yeah.
And that's the thing about it that drove me nuts, is that nothing of consequence happened other than just stuff happening. It's like you're watching a D&D game, and it's being told by a person who has no end game. And then the second two are better.
The first thing I want to say to that, of course, is that that's somewhat, as I said, kind of the conventions of that genre, but then we've all seen fantasy things that are more story and character driven, but then this happens also with science fiction and other things where you know you've got a genre where the point is like the science, and with science fiction sometimes the point is like the science and the idea, and the characters are kind of just stereotypes or just like kind of wooden stick figures walking around, and like the point isn't really. Or you'll get mysteries where the character that you're following isn't really isn't really going through any kind of a character arc, and it's not really about them. It's just that's the device through which the mystery is being told.
I can't get through those either.
See, I've always wanted to coin the phrase, and maybe somebody else has done this before, but I haven't heard it much. I've always wanted to coin the term literary genre fiction.
Yeah.
Which is a genre where you have those supernatural components, or you have those other kinds of components, or like with a mystery or something. But it still counts as literary fiction. You still have all of the rules that you kind of need. And again, literary can also be a formula. Literary can also be a... Some people say literary is a genre. That's a... I think Stephen King said that. Other major writers have said that, and I agree with that. Literary can kind of be a formula, but I feel like you can... make me care about a person and make characters feel like real people, and still fulfill all of the things that make it a fantasy or a science fiction piece or a thing like that. And I think that more and more we're seeing more of those things, and we're starting to expect it that way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think we're starting to get to the point where a character has to go through some kind of journey as opposed to just a physical journey.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we're kind of expecting more layers to things.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think everything has to be that. I think that you can tell a straight-up farce where you're pretending like those characters have real character traits and real people, but it's tongue-in-cheek about it, and we know that they're not, and we're just goofing around. But you can do that. I mean, that can work.
And you know what? It doesn't have to be completely in your face, and it doesn't have to be 100% apparent. Like even Dredd, I think, had a nice subtle character arc in a moment of change toward the end, but it didn't have to be in your face. And a lot of that was just action, and I still enjoyed that because I felt like we're moving towards something as opposed to just there's a point A and there's a point B, and I guess we have to walk to get through to there. And when we get to the end, we all just kind of look at each other and laugh. I mean, like, what's the point?
I can't disagree with you. I know there's lots of... And some of it, I think, is just what you're already accustomed to. I didn't grow up with that kind of stuff. You know, and then when I got to it, I was already so... used to things where I actually, cared about a person because they seemed like a real person, that I had a difficult time getting into a thing where they didn't.
Yeah.
So that's a thing. But then, of course, I look at a lot of TV shows I watched when I was a kid and stuff, and they didn't have that stuff either. And I guess I was just there for the action. So I guess sometimes the trappings are enough, and I don't care about fantasy trappings in the first place.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's always been my thing with that genre.
I like the blue collar type of sword and sorcery stuff.
I'm just imagining a dude with the
he's like a loincloth and a blue collar.
The Infinity Gauntlet, but he works at Walmart,
Oh yeah, I mean I like the blue collar sword and sorcery, like Conan, Cole. I mean stuff that's. I'm just imagining this guy with a shield and a sword, but he works at Piggly Wiggly. Yeah, his name's Ash. He works at S-Mart.
Thanks for the question. Stumble Reel, 2 questions. Question 1, Vince, how important do you believe facial expression and body language is for a comic with dialogue/captions that's already emotionally resonating? Shane Davis's art looks awesome in Superman Earth 1, but when he draws characters just talking, he often shows them at very plain angles and doesn't have them do much to emphasize what they feel while saying their lines. I thought he was talking about stand-up comedy for a minute. Stuart and Monin, all new X-Men, etc., all have very distinct art styles, but don't seem fond of drawing many faces other than happy, mad, or sad. And he gives some more examples. What do you think, man?
I think that expressions are incredibly important, and I feel like your artist is in some ways, your actor and your director, and
that's a great way to put it. Yeah,
they take the plot. And I mean, they take the script and then they interpret it for you. And I've seen 2 different ways of doing it. I don't like it when it's just dynamic, when there's just the action and then there's like talking heads, and it doesn't necessarily matter what they look like. They're just talking. That kind of drives me nuts. But alternatively, it drives me nuts when somebody tries to force expressions, and instead of giving you the idea or the impression of the expression, they have to like draw a mouth talking so people look like.
Oh yeah, good point.
And that drive, like, especially when there's a bunch of there's a heated conversation going and people are yelling and they all look like. And
yeah, it's like we can imagine. Now, I mean, like if a person is yelling, you probably ought to have at least a mouth that's open.
Yeah, but
it is kind of weird when I can appreciate a mouth that's closed and you have dialogue because you can imagine like a person just talking okay he's opening his mouth and talking. But if somebody's like rah, it's kind of weird if they're like they're just about to open their mouth, but they haven't done it yet. Because
lack of emotion also says something. And that's the thing, is that if the characters all look neutral throughout it, what that means is that it's not important to them. I mean, or the stakes are low, or they're not concerned about the outcome.
Now, having said that, I would counter slightly. I agree with you for the most part. I would counter slightly by saying that if it's well written enough and characters have distinct voices, I find myself ignoring bad art.
Well, yeah, I can do that.
Like I'll read it, and the fact that the dialogue is expressive, but the character is not, I tend to not think, oh, that character is delivering it differently than it's written. I tend to just think, this artwork's kind of poor, and I just move on. The problem with that, of course, is that that's ineffective overall storytelling, because why isn't it just a short story?
Yeah, I was about to say that. There's no word for word.
There's no, why isn't it just a short? There's no reason that you really need the art. So, I mean, I will like read and be somewhat, like, I can live with a good comic, like a good script, good storytelling that's got kind of crappy art. I can't deal with the other way. You know, great art and not a very good story. You're like, well, I can just put this on my wall. Why do I have to, read all this stuff and have, ineffective storytelling? But it does feel, especially when you're buying month to month and it's new stuff, you kind of feel a little bit cheated, because you're like, well, I spent $4 for a book. I'd like good story and good art.
Yeah.
I
mean, to tie this into something else, here's an example, and this is why it's important to me. Like, even in film, if you have an actor or an actress that is incapable of delivering the emotion that you want, it doesn't matter what they're saying, because what you're seeing is conflicting to what you're hearing. So, it does matter what they're saying, but, like, for example, Godfather 3, Sofia Coppola's character, it's like, no, and she looks deadpan.
Right.
Same thing with Kristen Stewart and everything she's been in.
But isn't that vocal delivery with what the person is doing? It's
the one
it's
thing
enticing,
that can convince me otherwise.
It's enticing more of your senses. It's using more of your senses than a comic book is. So I feel like you can get away with bad art in a way that you can't get away with bad delivery, because the delivery isn't there. Delivery is still kind of you. Is still kind of your head and what you're imagining the person saying. So I mean, like, I'm not saying the art doesn't affect it at all, but a lot less than a really crappy performance, where, because the thing is, you still, it's like it's like Nick Post said in our documentary. It's like comics, or he loved comics because they're somewhere between a novel and a movie, where a movie spells everything out for you and a novel leaves it all to your imagination. Comics are somewhere in the middle, where you have to use some of your imagination, but there's also this visual component to it. And so I feel like you are doing enough of the legwork that it's not as big of a problem.
No, I agree. Because you could have the words in your head, and like, you're focusing mostly on the words, but Batman's saying it.
When I see unexpressive characters, I tend to just imagine they're being expressive and they were just drawn kind of poorly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of depends. Like, if the overall art style, I feel, is conflicting to the actual story, which I have felt that way before. I go, wow, that's a shame.
And do you not adjust? Do you not get used to it?
I tend to adjust, but sometimes it just annoys the crap out of me.
The story's great. I can generally live with it, but
it's the one thing that saves it is if there's enough, not necessarily quantity of text, but quality of text, that I can get the impression. But I feel like a lot of the time you can't deliver something without trying to adopt that facial expression in reality. So when I see it on the page, I don't quite make the leap to the extent that it's supposed to be. Does that make sense?
That's fair, and also it can be bad communication, right? Like there could be something that was intended in the visual storytelling that didn't come out because it's not expressive enough, or it's not detailed enough, or like you don't see enough of what you're supposed to see, or that maybe there aren't enough panels. Maybe the artist is expecting you to make too much of a leap from this action to the. We've all experienced this, from this action to this action. I've had things before where I'll hear a writer or an artist in an interview discussing a book, and what they're talking about is not what I experienced, because in my opinion they didn't do enough legwork to communicate to me what they were saying. Yeah. Maybe it's in their script, but it didn't quite make it on the page, and that can be a problem. So, and the other thing too is when you're talking about inexpressive art, or not detailed enough art, or there's not enough stuff being played on the page, and then you need. And then in order to fill in and make up for that, there's just all this narration. Once again, what the heck is the point of the art? Why is it even there?
Yeah.
You just have all this narration.
I thought it was funny that we both pointed at the same time, and I was like, oh, look at that, we're all pointing. Also... Also...
It worked this time.
I think you can go too far the other direction. You can have characters over-expressing.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So if you can have an overactor or an underactor, you can have an overexpression or underexpression.
Excellent question. Cap, since you're... This is the second one from Stumble Reel. Since you're comfortable with critiquing something aesthetic like action figures... I mean, more comfortable than I used to be. It's a thing that for the longest time I was like, I'm not going to do because I'm not going to... Not a story component. I'll say it.
I did not mean to hit you in the face.
I like this. It's kind of vitally. I think that's really cool. Now already this is kind of a silly looking Batman, but I feel like it's difficult to take any Batman seriously when his head does this. This is what I feel like. This concludes today's episode of Objectivity. Anyway, I used to be less comfortable with reviewing action figures, but I'll tell you this: I used to not like to review anything that didn't have a story component. I'm such a story guy. That's my expertise, if I have such a thing. I went to school for that. The first time I critiqued a video game, I felt weird about it.
Yeah.
I did the first thing I ever did. I think I did the Tick game for Super Nintendo for Tick Month several years ago. I mean, I felt weird about that. It didn't really have a story component. I was glad that there were a couple of cutscenes and they're not cutscenes, but there were a couple of like panels and things from comics, so I could at least like tie it back to things that I had reviewed for story before. And then once I did Spawn Year, I did a whole bunch of video game reviews, and I got a lot more used to what exactly should the standards be for good video games, and what do you talk about when there's not really story, But anyway, I'm going to read the actual question now. Since you're comfortable with critiquing something aesthetic like action figures, are you ever going to talk in depth about the art and panel composition of the comics you review and whether or not they guide the reader's eyes from left to right page? It doesn't matter how good a story is if I feel like it's a chore to read. Well, this is connected to your last question. I think it's super cool that you asked both of those questions. I almost wish that we read both questions and talked about them together because that's really cool. It's a nice follow-up to that. And this might make a good topic, either of these, really, although we just got a lot of mileage out of that first one. I used to, for some reason, when I write about comics, and I don't do as much of that as I'd like to, I just don't have a lot of time, so I tend to talk comics off the cuff. I tend to talk a little bit more about art and panel composition and stuff when I'm doing a thorough written review. I don't get to it as much when I'm talking off the cuff for some reason. And again, as you said, when you said since I'm comfortable about that now, I'm not a real visual guy, so sometimes I don't feel like I'm quite qualified. So when I have something to say about it, when something catches my eye, I will talk about it. But I don't want to like reach for things and be like, okay, and this is the part of the review where I'm supposed to talk about panel layout, and then I make something up. I don't want to do that. I like to be as real as I can be. So I talk about things that I feel like I have something to say about. That stuff is very important in comics, definitely, but I do not have the thing that you do as much, where if a story is great but the art is poor for the very reasons I was mentioning earlier, I can't read it. I'm such a word guy that if I'm getting enough out of the dialogue and if there's narration boxes, I can kind of look. Sometimes I have to make myself look at the art on a page. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you have that.
Sometimes, yeah.
I'm such a word guy that I will forget that I'm reading a comic book and be like, oh yeah, I should be looking at these pictures that are here that are, telling me things. So yes, it is a visual medium, and that is very important. And when that's working really well, I tend to talk about it more when it's working than when it's not, unless it's just really, really bad. But when we're talking about composition and stuff, and like art, I tend to talk more about like, you could have like filled in the background and actually put some buildings back there and stuff. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. Well, I talk more about what's not there than what is, but
sometimes I like kind of that free form composition, but I also hate it when it's too cluttered and you don't know where you're supposed to go on the page, because sometimes I'll find myself going, read straight across, oh, well, I guess I was supposed to come down to this corner and then up into the middle and then go across the page.
That drives me crazy.
Now, it can be used effectively if it's supposed to represent chaos and there's no specific order of events, but you see the same characters in varying different panels.
That can help you get into a psychopath's head and stuff like that. Yeah,
it's interesting to kind of toy with the meaning of things, but like somebody that kind of did a freeform that I think is really interesting was some of that. You're
gonna say Batwoman, aren't you?
No.
Oh, okay.
But
okay.
I could see that. Yes.
I thought that's where you're going
with J.H. Williams.
That's a thing that looks like it's all out of order and crazy, but you know exactly where to look at, and I think it's cool how structured it is while it looks unstructured. Mm-hmm. But what were you going to say?
Joe Quesada's Daredevil with Brian Michael Bendis.
Absolutely.
So it had a little more of a free flow to it, and there was like significantly altered panels, and panels appeared throughout the page, but you knew where to go because the art was obviously going into the next panel.
And I've talked about this before, but Bendis does a thing that drives me crazy.
The whole, like, try to speak like real people do, or...
Oh, no, that sometimes that too, but as far as panel layout, even though Bendis is not the artist, he always, obviously, is giving his artist some guidance about what he wants the pages to look like, because every Bendis comic has at least one, if not two, full pages where the panels go all the way across the page. Every single Bendis comic I've ever read, I don't think there's one that doesn't do it. Every single Bendis comic I've ever read has at least, and it's usually right smack dab in the middle. If it's 22 pages, it's going to be on page 11. It goes
it's easier to line it up that way.
From left to right, all the way through over the staples. And that's not a problem, except that because it looks like a traditional panel layout, sometimes those boxes will stop before the staples, and you'll go down here and start reading. Yep. It works when subtly he's made sure that it goes, or whoever's writing, he's made sure that it goes over the staples slightly so that you know, oh, okay, it goes all the way across the page. Sometimes you can't tell.
Yeah. Cut right down the middle.
I hate that!
It's like a 6-panel grid on each page, and you're like, oh, it reads like, no, it doesn't.
I'm also not sure why he's married to that structure. I don't think it's a bad thing. I would love to talk to him and ask him why that's a thing.
He's just kind of a jerk. He likes to sit in his basement and laugh.
No. It's not a thing that he does to confuse people. But it seems like it's a formula of his, and it seems like almost a convention for him where he's got to do that. He was doing that all the way back in Sam and Twitch. 1999 he was doing this.
I wonder if he has like an extreme love for those big books where you get a huge page and a regular comic book.
The word, when you look up the word decompression in a dictionary, you get Brian Michael Bendis' picture. So the idea of Bendis liking giant tomes makes perfect sense. I mean,
like maybe he really likes that little Nemo book, you know, from the newspapers where it was like top to bottom, left to right, full.
This is not us making fun of horribly and saying we don't like that. I love Bendis.
No, I do like Bendis.
this is just a thing he does that sometimes is problematic if it doesn't go over that.
I'm just saying, you know, maybe he did like that structure, you know, that old-timey newspaper look.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I forgot all about that.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Because they don't do that anymore.
Connor Nielsen. Hi, Connor. Connor is, you're not on the judge panel this year, unfortunately, but Connor is one of our, and he's fantastic, one of our contestants this year on Who Reviews Their Viewers, and he's just brilliant. I'll show you some of his stuff if you haven't seen it yet. What is your comic book dream team book? This is the thing we answer every year. It seemed to. Mine is Grant Morrison writing and Darwin Cook providing art for a Silver Age Superman throwback. That does sound really super cool. By the way, he's in college right now, and one of his teachers is Kelly Sue DeConnick, which is really cool. And he got her briefly to appear in one of his Who Reviews the Reviewers videos, and none of us knew it was her because she was just holding the sign in front of her face. Of course, I don't know what she looks like anyway. But then later on, he mentioned in this year we do interviews with everybody about their videos, so we get to learn a lot about the videos that they're making. And he mentioned in his interview for that particular round that Kelly Sue DeConnick was in that video. And I was like, that was Kelly Sue DeConnick. That's fantastic. Anyway, this is another thing I try to answer a little bit differently every year, and I feel like I answered this recently on an open forum on one of the live shows. So I'm gonna let you go ahead and go because it's gonna take me a minute to come up with something new. Yeah,
it's a little difficult. I mean,
do it. Go.
I would like to see. Oh God, I don't know why his name is not coming to me.
That's a George Burns movie, dude.
It's the thing that people yell out during intercourse. So,
I can't believe you said that.
All I can think of is... You
can't say that on this channel, man. So I can't believe you... No, it's cool.
All I can think of is Eric Burnham.
Eric Bana writing for...
Burnham.
Spock!
Writing The Rocketeer. And
interesting.
I would love to see him write The Rocketeer.
I'm totally going to send him a message and ask him if he would want to write that book.
He did say he would like to write that book.
Oh, he did?
Remember when we did the interview with him?
Oh!
He said he would love to write that, but there's like Mark Waid gets dibs or something.
I rescind that. Oh, yeah, I'm sure he does. Yeah.
So I would love to see Burnham writing The Rocketeer, and I would like to see Ariel Olivetti on the book for art. Yep.
I want to see... I'm going to say something stupid.
Something stupid! Got you beat.
I want to see, because Mark Waid is, I was going to say Wade too, Mark Waid is such a versatile writer that he will write for things that I would never think Mark Waid would write for. Like he's done really funny stuff, he's done really dark stuff, he's done stuff all over the place. I want to see Mark Waid write The Tick.
Yeah, you can see that.
I want to know what that would be like. Mark Waid writing The Tick with Philip Moy. I think that would be fantastic. Philip Moy did a lot of stuff with Powerpuff Girls, and I think he could totally write and draw on. And of course, he's really versatile too, but he's got a really kind of cartoony sensibility. I think he could do a really cool Tick.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's the thing. That's the thing I'd love to see.
I'd like to see Frazetta.
Well, yeah, that'd be great. You know,
Frazetta did like his cartoons. You know, the cartoony
let's
characters.
answer one more. Oh no, this is hard. Why? Oliver Gritty. What Gritty? Now remember, we don't look at these ahead of time, so we did not know this was coming. This is an excellent question. I wish I had time to look up things and think about it. What songs would you love to hear on the Awesome Mix Volume 2 in the next Guardians film? What a great question.
You know, that's the thing is that
obviously it's going to have to be more late 70s and maybe slightly early 80s stuff, but I mean, it's going to be from that same period.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is that movie made me enjoy songs I never enjoyed before.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
Like, in fact, a significant amount of that soundtrack I didn't enjoy until I saw the movie.
They put it into context. You know, I had the same thing.
Yeah, like, Fooled Around and Fell in Love. I really didn't like that song. I mean, granted, that was his one big hit. He's actually a blues musician, but the guy who wrote that.
They made it. I mean, but yeah, you know, and a lot of that. One or two songs I still don't really care for that much, but
I still like the Runaways, Cherry Bomb.
See, I don't like that song at all.
I love that stuff. I would like to see a different Runaways song on there. I'm trying.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because you know, and I've said this before, but one of the reasons that movie really resonated with me was because my mom, and yes, this is me stalling, trying to think of things. And helping Vince out. I've said this on camera before, but one of the reasons that movie resonated with me so much is because my mother made me mixtapes when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So I had this. So I had that with Star-Lord. And I had just, my mom had just found the first mixtape she ever made me that I remembered growing up with. It was a big deal to me. Just a few weeks before that movie came out, Vince. And she just found it. It was a big. No, that's not the. No.
Cheating on the phone.
That was such a. Well, I don't have mine with me. Wait, yes, I do. Let's not do
Quick, everybody, look at your phones.
But yeah, she would repeat bands on later tapes, and so it makes me kind of wonder if maybe the same thing will be true of this, where they'll go back to some of the same musicians. I didn't think of that. I think it'd be cool to see something like, I'm thinking more bands than specific songs. Maybe something like Styx or Moody Blues. Although there wasn't a lot of arena rock.
Blue Oyster Cult.
Blue Oyster Cult, that's interesting.
Queen. I like Queen.
There's a particular song I'm trying to think of. What is it? It's on the tip. That's the other thing I can't think of. Well, anyway.
The Who? I'd like to see The Who on there. Why not?
Yeah. Space Oddity.
Oh, David Bowie.
That should be in there. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that would be cool. That's maybe too obvious of a choice, but...
I'm not really hip to all the pop. I mean, but that's the thing, is that period's pop wasn't a thing that I really got into, like ABBA and all that stuff, but...
Yeah. I could see... things that I could see them going for, that, you know, regardless of what I would... I could see there being some Earth, Wind, and Fire there.
I do like Earth, Wind, and
Fire. And I like them too, but that's a thing that I could see. Yeah.
I'd like Parliament Funkadelic.
The fish is that?
George Clinton, Parliament Funkadelic. Flashlight. It's a good song.
Well, we actually answered that question. Fantastic. Everyone, thanks as always for watching Geeks and Nerds. We sure appreciate it. If there's a topic you'd like us to talk about in the future video, feel free to leave that in the comments, and we'll certainly consider things. We're going to do 2 or 3 more weeks of this. I know we've already done 5 of these, but we're only on page 5 5 of 9, so we've still got quite a few things to go. So we're moving backwards. So anyway, if you've got something you'd like us to talk about on here, again, go to the link in the description. We'll try to get to it. We can't promise anything at this point. We really have appreciated all your questions. These have been really fun and thought-provoking, and hope you've enjoyed listening to us struggle to answer them. I am Captain Logan.
I'm Vince, reminding you, support your local comic book store!
Thanks, Phil. See you next week.